Hello YouTube, Jason here from 3D Printing Canada, and today we're going to build a bunch of boxes. No, I'm just kidding. We're actually going to be building a Modix Big 40. Big format machine. Modix does these machines ranging from the Big 40 up to the 120Z, up to the Big 60s, and anything in between. So feel free to check out the links on our site, see what the machines can do for you. Today we're going to be doing the Big 40. For me, it will be about a week. For you, it will be about an hour or two. So bear with me, but in a very short period of time, we are going to turn this into back to the serious side of things. This build is going to take you about a week. The most common question that I get with these printers when customers build them, they have difficulty following or difficulty doing things. When they finish doing the install, something doesn't work quite right. The answer is just follow the directions. The directions are actually very well written, very well laid out. If you follow the directions, follow the specs properly, it will work and it will come together properly. I know I've been doing 3D printing for quite a few years, a few more than I'd really like to admit, but I took my knowledge and put it aside, follow the directions online, they do work. So with no further ado, we are going to take this mess of boxes that we have, we're going to clean off my desk, do a little bit of organization, straighten up, and then we're going to get to building. So we'll see you in a moment. All right, so now that we've got a little bit of organization done, I've got my desk cleaned up a little bit. Open the boxes up in the order in which you're going to need them. As you open up the main box, all the nuts and bolts are labeled rails XYZ. This one here is labeled bed assembly. So you'll only need these bags as they're called for in the instructions. As it is right now, I've got the box Big 40 PRF. Which is basically will include sections of frame for the bed, for the frame itself. It will have your linear rails, linear rail blocks. There are some special instructions that we need to go through with those, some special attention we need to pay, so we'll go through those as we do it. It'll also have your ball screws with the nut blocks already installed. As you get all your pieces out, I recommend keep a garbage box close on hand because you're going to need it. So as we go through, you'll notice over here on my left, your right, I have my laptop set up. I am logged into the customer portal on the Modix website. That is where their instructions are. They're all 110% all online. If you have difficulty in following any of the instructions online, they have a comment section. You can feel free to add comments. Something you feel that could make the install a little easier, something's not quite clear, make comments on it. Do not consider it to be a support ticket. It's not something they will answer you back on. If you need a support ticket open, and if you're having any of your parts are damaged, missing, can't find any, send an email to support@Modix. They will help you out on the support ticket, but the comments field in the instructional videos are not for that form. So, with no further ado, we are going to keep our instructions running on the left, and we're going to start breaking out some of the extrusion, start getting some of our frame put together. So for this, the instructions are telling me that I need 4 pieces of extrusion at 1146 a piece. 1146. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we will keep those to one side. We need 2 pieces, 700 millimeter. 600. 2 pieces at 700 millimeter. Now you will notice as you're getting these pieces open and ready to go, the long piece here, for example, it already has some holes drilled in. This end has 1 hole in it. This end has 2 sets of holes drilled in it. Just make mention of these when we're putting them together. It's not important at this step. You just want to make sure you have the right lengths that you're going to need so you can get rid of some stuff out of your way. The next 2 we need are 620 mil. 620s for 2. And we need 5 600s, which should be these. So I've got 4 here, and I've got 1 here. As for the rest of this, we can temporarily move it out of our way. One thing I will make mention of at this point, be very careful with both your linear rails and with your ball screws. Leave them in the plastic bags until you absolutely have to open them. They're sealed on both ends because you don't want to lose these blocks off them. These blocks are imperative. They actually have brackets that you have to install on both ends, so you don't run the risk of losing these blocks. It just makes your install much more difficult. You cannot reinstall them. That's the reason why Modix has gone ahead and had them all installed for you. The remainder of this extrusion is what we will use a little later in the process. So again, because we don't need it, we can just lay it out of our way. Next, we can just get rid of all the plastic covering off of all of these pieces. All right, so I've got all the pieces together, all the plastics peeled off the extrusion. There's 1 piece that's not included in this box. It's a small red bracket. This is actually new for the Big 40, so this is a new one for me. Located this in the Modix MTL2 box. It's in a bag labeled Other. It's with several other parts. But other than that, all of the parts and equipment you need are in the bag called Frame. All your aluminum extrusion is laid out here based on size. So the next step in it is we're going to start attaching these fasteners to the end of the appropriate rails using the M8 by 25 and the M8 by 12. So once we get these in, these brackets go together like this. There's a piece here with ears. Your bolt's simply going to go through it. And according to our instructions, if you have a look at this piece, the long extrusion, it's got 2 holes at this end, 1 hole on this end. So on the side with 1 hole is where you're simply going to thread this into the end of the extrusion. Now, when you tighten these down, you're going to want to bring them in most of the way, but not all of the way. So you're going to leave a little bit, this bracket's going to be a little loose on the end. So you do this with the 4 long ones. Okay, the next one is the 2 620s and the 4 600s. So that's going to be these 6. So the ones here, we're going to lay those aside for right now, as we're not going to need to do this process with them. Next step, we're going to do the front and the back frames on this machine. So for each one of these frames, we're going to need 2 of these. Lay the ones we're not using off to the side. 1 of those. 1 of those. And 2 of those. Now, I'm going to take a little bit of a break for a second so I can show you something. Leave this one the way it is. I'm going to grab this bar here. So, in this bar, you'll notice that it has 2 sets of holes, 1 set in each end on all sides. The reason for that is, when you're dealing with these bolts with the aluminum extrusion, these holes are meant so your Allen key can fit straight through them. Because if we have a look at the way this assembles, this bracket slides into the extrusion this way. And once it slides in, you can position it anywhere on this extrusion. Where they want you to assemble it is right inside of this hole. So in order to get at that bolt, they drill the hole all the way through the extrusion so you can tighten it down. And it becomes a rigid, straight joint that will always be 90 degrees. So just so you can see it come apart, position it anywhere, and just slide it right into the T-slot. So although you can't see that perfectly well from the angle you're at, that's basically what I'm doing with these. Our long legs have the T-slots on the top, and I'm essentially tightening these down through the bar with the hole in it at the very top. At this point, it's not critical to get everything perfectly square, but I usually try and get it close. The other thing at this point is, don't bother to torque these bolts all the way down as tight as they'll go. There may be a little bit of adjustment required. The tighter you make the bolts now, the more work you're gonna have to put into taking it apart again later. So once the top bar is on, now take your bottom bar, align your nuts so they both are facing in the same direction, and you can drop them straight into the T-slot on the bottom of your legs. Now, this is where the two sets of holes come in. There's a set of holes here, and there's another set of holes about 60 to 70 millimeters up from that. The second set of holes you're going to utilize later in the assembly instructions. These bolts are meant to line up through the first set of holes right now. The measurement is 45 millimeters from here to the bottom of the extrusion. When we measure it up, once we get most of it set up, the final measurement will be 45 mil. So there's one frame complete, and now we'll move on to the next one. For this part of the process, we're going to take our connectors, and we're going to lay them in. It doesn't matter at this point which side they go on, as long as you get them all on the same side. As I'm putting these pieces in, these frames and these frames have to be roughly in line. We do still have to double check our measurements to make sure everything is sitting where it should be. Here at the top, it's easy. Make sure the top face is flush and make sure that you're even on the outside on these faces here. So the outside of this piece of aluminum you can see here should be flush with this edge here. And the same thing on this side. This edge should be flush up here on the top. It'll just make for making the frame square later a little easier. All right, so once you have both sides of your frames put together, attach the two top connectors. And the easiest way I've found to do this is this way. So you're gonna lay this on top. Because this is black extrusion, if you're dragging it across another piece of extrusion, you're gonna scratch it all up. So you wanna try and minimize it as much as you can. If you happen to have a second person around that can give you a hand, that would be good, but it's possible to do on your own. So once you get that laid in, just simply slide it out that way a touch. Then you can get the other T-nut to slide in here and then pull it back towards you a little bit. Once those are in, you can slide the lower connectors in. You don't have to bolt these up right away. You can just sit them in to help support the frame while you finish squaring everything up. So although it's not tightened up, everything is self-supporting right now at this point. So you can do a little bit of adjustment and whatnot need be. And you don't have to worry about going to the gym to work out to get ready for this. This is going to be pretty close to your final bolt up on these. So again, rub your fingers over the edges here as you're tightening these screws down to make sure everything is going to sit square and flush. Again, you can put them snug down. There will be opportunities later to kind of do a final tighten on everything, but you just don't want everything moving around while you're doing any of your final adjustments. So your distance down here from, show you on this leg here. We'll get this set up and in place. So from the bottom face of this to the bottom face of your leg right here should be 45 millimeter. When you're dead on 45, you can start to snug this down a little bit. If you happen to be a little off, if the hole's not perfect, you can kind of push your Allen key a little bit, left or right. Double check your other side as well. The next thing that you're gonna get very, very familiar with is these style of drop-in nuts. They're called just sliding Tnuts. These are a little different than the drop-in or hammer nuts that you're more familiar with. These ones here actually have a little small ball in them. So they will still slide in the end of any extrusion if you happen to have access to the end of it. And it will still slide in place, and because of the roller ball that's in it, it will hold it in any position that you put it in. The trick comes when you're dealing with extrusion that you don't have access to top or bottom. So these will actually roll into the extrusion. Now here's the trick that I find with these is about the easiest way of dealing with it. So if you take the extrusion like this, hold your Allen key inside the slot, use your T-nut, drop it inside the channel, and then just simply push it with your finger until you hear it click into place. Now, if you put it in later in the assembly and steps, the position of this hole, if this hole is top or bottom, it actually will make a difference to it. If you have to remove it out of the extrusion, take a small pick, put it inside the T-nut, pull it off one side, then just put the pick in the bolt hole, and you can pull it right straight out again. So in case you happen to put it in upside down, you can actually get them out the same way, but the ball screw holds it in place for you. So that being said, we're going to prep this piece, which at the end of this is going to be sitting right around here somewhere. It's actually going to be holding the drag link when we get into that part of the install. But this is basically a support piece for the back of the printer. So once we do this bracket, you're going to use the 16 millimeter M8 bolts, thread it into the T-nut. Make sure your bracket, this part of the bracket, is flush with the cut extrusion. And in this particular case, you can crank it down to its final torque. On the other side, this is going to be sitting in this orientation. So you want the covered part of this bracket towards the inside of the machine. So it's going to be sitting in this orientation like this. We can drop our T-nuts in. Once our T-nuts in, slide it up under the hole. And then you're going to use the 12 millimeter bolt to do the attachment to that T-nut. I sometimes will line it up with the Allen key just to make it a little easier. All right, so the next step of the process is we've got our frame put together. It's now sitting down upside down, so our feet are actually at the top. The next part we're going to put in is the support rod at the very back. So when you're looking at this machine right side up, this red piece is going to be on the right side. So I'm going to install it this way. When we invert the machine around, this will be on the right side. Modix has put this bracket on, and you'll notice it's got an open side and a closed side. The closed side is towards the inside of the machine because this will have to remain flat in case you buy the enclosure kit that you'll have to put on over top of it. So just bear in mind this points towards the back. This bracket here is just simply there to loan support. So the back support bar in this case is going to be used to hold the drag chain or support the drag chain. we're going to be installing it here now. And we're going to set the distance up as to where it's supposed to be. Put our other T-nut in on this side. Now, on the side with just the aluminum bracket, you use the 16mm M8 bolts. You can kind of snug it just a little bit so it doesn't start moving all over on you. Move the T-nut up so it matches up with the hole. Sometimes you might find it easier if you get the T-nut close, stick your Allen key in and make sure your holes are aligned so you can get the bolt in there okay. So the distance between our bottom rail and this mid rail, the distance between will be 600mm. So let's bring one side close. Just give it a little small tighten so it's in place. This side, we can put it in as close as we can. Once you're comfortable with the distance, you can actually torque this one to final. Come back to your first side. Loosen your bolt up. Again, once you have your final distance set, give it your final turn. Don't forget to snug up the other 3 bolts on this extrusion as well. Okay. And that's all the major frame pieces put together. Okay, so the next step in this is going to be we're going to add our caster wheels. Modix actually does do a really good job on adding commercial grade casters to their machines. So all you have to do is just take the small stud, make sure there's an end that's not, doesn't have a hole in it, and the other end which does have a hole for an Allen key in it. Just feed the stud, start it off by a couple of turns, and then use the Allen key and you can just crank it down. You actually do want to tighten this up to the bottom of the caster. In case you ever have to remove it, you do want the stud to come out with the caster rather than leaving the stud in the bottom of the leg. So in the top, we're going to simply thread this down as much as we can. All right, so once we finish this up, we want to grab our big ugly wrench and give each one of these wheels a little bit of a tighten. And then we're good. So technically we're done with the frame. The next step that we're going to do after this is going to start working onto the linear rails. It's actually a little easier if you leave it in this configuration when we start doing the linears. And then next, when we flip it back over, we'll be able to leave it on its feet for the remainder of the build. Other than that, we'll see you back here in a moment.